Hey 951 listeners, it's your host Casey Lovell, and today's episode is part 2 of our technology series. So if you missed part 1 of our technology series with Neil Anderson, go check that out. But today we will be talking with another guest speaker who works in the sports technology world about how technology is changing the game, as well as what players should be looking at investing in, because there's a lot of things out there. Everyone who is in the sports world right now knows that sports technology, the whole industry, it's just booming and it's evolving. So we thought we would bring you another sports technology episode to really help you navigate and figure out the ever-growing and ever-changing world of sports technology. So our guest speaker today is Jared Tiefenthaler, and Jared is formerly a college football player, and after he graduated from college, he actually went into business with his dad, and they started a sports tech company called Seam Readers. And so Jared is currently the co-founder of Seam Readers, and what Seam Readers is, they're a pitch recognition company that helps train players across the world to read the seams of the ball so that they can recognize different pitches just by recognizing how the seams are moving. And so their free app is called Seam Readers, and you can just go download that. No matter what phone you have, you can download it and you can begin to train yourself on how to recognize pitches. And I actually downloaded the app myself on my phone and began to just kind of mess around with it, play around with it. And it's actually really cool because it uses different games and techniques to teach you how to see and differentiate, a curveball from a rise ball, from a drop ball, and so on. So the app is really fun, and the best part is it's free. We all love free stuff, so it's free. Go download it and see how you like it and how it can help you in your game if you are a softball or a baseball player. And I have put all of their website and social media information in the About section for this episode, so you can have easy access to everything and go check them out and download their app. So without further ado, let's dive in. Jared, thank you so much for joining me on the 951 podcast today. Excited to have you and to just really dive into the topic of technology. I'm so amazed by where technology is at in sports right now, even where it's come in the past 5 years. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Casey. I am excited as well.
Yes, so like I said, we're going to be diving into the topic of technology and really how it's changing and affecting the game, because I went to a conference late last year and I'm walking around and I'm seeing all of these booths and all of these, crazy different kinds of technology that people are developing and coming out with, and that I think are going to be so beneficial to players. And obviously we'll get into the specific kind of technology that you guys offer, but
Sure.
before we really get into some of the specifics of talking about technology and how it impacts and changes the game, can you just start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I was a college football player, Division II, Black Hill State University. My father was a professional baseball player, and my sister was a Division I college softball player. So yeah, I graduated. Me and my dad went into business and with a long time family idea, you could say, that he had since the 80s. And now we are a pitch recognition company with a free app out there called Seam Reader. And we're trying to train kids, baseball and softball players all over the world, what the different faces a pitch might have as a hitter. So that's what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And listeners, in the About section for this episode, I will put a link to their website, and it'll have information about their app, and you can look into them more. But I would encourage you to go visit their website, and then you can go follow them on social media. I follow them on Instagram, so go follow them. I will have a link to their website so you guys can really check all that out and see how that could best help you, your teammates, if you're a coach, see how you could utilize that for your team. And so now I really want to just pick your brain about technology since, that's what you're so involved in doing everything with team
Sure.
readers. So, with technology, what impact do you think technology is having on the sports world, and what does this mean for athletes?
So technology, I guess it depends on the sport you're referring to technology, in my opinion. I think technology in most sports is good for the long run. Most technology impacts their game in a positive way. Some people would say that technology in baseball could be hurting the game a little bit, maybe when talking about balls and strikes and the umpires, and maybe replacing them with computers and robots and
Yeah.
stuff, and that technology is maybe getting a little too much in the way there for baseball. But for the most part, I think it's all positive, and if it helps athletes become better and get the most out of their bodies and the most out of their mechanics and keep them healthier. And on the fan side, if it enhances the fan experience, I'd say it's all positive stuff, and should keep progressing. And I mean, we've seen it in football. Football, the technology there has only made the game better for viewing, for safety, and I think it's doing the same for baseball. Maybe not the umpire part, but for
Yeah.
the most part, it's all good. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I think we could have a whole conversation about, the different technologies, and there are people saying that certain technologies are taking away from the game and things they're doing. So kind of talking on that a little bit, can you talk about how do you think technology can elevate an athlete's game, but how do you also think it could hurt an athlete's game?
So I think when it comes to technology, there has to be a standard of what you're viewing and what that applies to. So, for example, if you're trying to look at a technology, let's say an app that helps your swing, I think it's very hard for any technology on a phone to directly apply to someone's swing. So there's apps out there that say here's the optimum swing path for a baseball and a softball player. That technology can't take into effect all the different factors that might make that person a better hitter. So basically, you can't put anyone's swing into a cookie cutter mold and say this swing works for everybody, because that's just not how baseball and softball is.
Exactly.
There's many different swings and many of them are successful. So there,
Yeah.
in a way, I say technology won't ever be able to really do that because everyone is different. But if you look at technology as a way to study film, or you find that part of a sport that you can put on a phone or on a computer that directly applies, and I want to use seam readers as an example, but the example goes into football. And what I'm saying is, in football, you can use technology to study a team's offense or to study a team's defense. I did it playing college football. And for baseball, you can do the same in one area, being, you can study the different pitches someone has. And that's what we're trying to do with seam readers. So that's something that directly applies to the physical thing. And, there's other baseball technologies out there who have a direct impact on pitchers getting the most out of their bodies. I think all that stuff's good. But when you try to use technology to put someone's skill in a box and say everyone has to do it this way, then I think the technology is a little off base, because everyone's different, and you could never, put someone's skill in one box and say everyone should do it this way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do agree with that because I think there's a lot of technology out there too that people, like you said, if it's an app saying like how you can swing or what your body should be doing, and that's good as far as just having information and being
Sure.
able to get a basis. But things like specifically teaching a swing are really hard to do in that way because I love what you said there of you can't put that skill in a box. You can't put people swing in a box because I always like to tell my students it's that yes, I have, some of my black and white basics with swings of
Sure.
keep your hands up inside the ball. There's certain things that are kind of like the black and white. You need to be able to do this with your swing, but I'm also telling them every athlete is built differently.
Yep.
Every athlete is naturally better at this or that. And so if it was just if you swing exactly this way, you'll be great, then a lot of people would be at the professional level or be doing things, but there's a lot of natural skills and qualities in body build that
Yep.
make people very different in that way.
Yeah, and just touching on, you said, their body build, but even some people's brains are different in their reaction timing. One swing might be better for the way they react compared to someone else. And an example that me and my dad always talk about is two different swings you want to measure in the big leagues. Barry Bonds, you could say, and Derek Jeter. They had very opposite swings, and yet they're both two of the most successful baseball players stat wise. And we don't have to get into steroids or anything, but or you could say Ken Griffey Jr. Then Ken Griffey Jr. and Derek Jeter had completely opposite swings, and yet they both made it to the highest level. They both are Hall of Famers, and they have opposite swings, and so you just can't put that in a box. We're on the same page there. That it can help as information, but it's not always right, and it never probably will be because not everyone's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And can you talk more about seam readers? And before we started, you're telling me a little bit about the app you offer and kind of what you can do on that. Can you just go a little bit more into depth for our listeners so they can just learn more about that and how they can get the app on their phone?
Definitely. So Seam Reader is our mobile app, and it's free, and it'll be free forever because our main goal is getting this information to kids. And
Mhm.
we're the first app out there that trains kids and players of all ages, I shouldn't just say kids, the different looks a pitch can have coming at them as a hitter. So when a ball rotates, it creates a pattern with the seams and the leather. And some of those patterns are very dramatically different, from a rise ball to a slider in baseball to a curveball, four seam fastball. They all look different. And so our app has taken the faces of these pitches and put them so that you can learn what each one looks like and then test your skills after you've learned what they look like. You could kind of think of it as flashcards for pitches.
Okay.
And so it's a pretty fun little game. It's all based on real analytics. All the different pitches rotate accordingly to how fast they should rotate. And the miles per hour, so the viewing time you get to see them for, is all based on averages from Little League all the way to the Olympics in softball and the major leagues in baseball. And it's a free app, and like I said, it'll be free forever. And we have some fun gaming stuff coming to it. We think this is a skill. We know this is a skill that you can learn on your phone, and it'll directly apply to the real life version, which is hitting. And I always end it when I explain it like this. In football, you watch film. Tom Brady, he watches film on whatever defense he's playing, and mid game he diagnoses that defense and reacts to it. And it's no different with what we're trying to do in baseball. The pitches are your film to study, and you need to know what they look like come game time. You've studied them and know right away whether that pitch is a rise ball or a drop ball, or in baseball a curveball, slider, whatever it is. And so it's just baseball's version of film study, you could say.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And again, listeners, I would encourage you, you can find the link to their website in the About section for this episode. And I will make sure to link all of that so you can get to it. And then just you can go search for that app on whatever phone that you have, and you can go download that and get that and test it out. And so, talking about technology, and like I mentioned, I was at this conference and I was seeing all these different things. And so, there's probably a lot of athletes that as technology just continues to just increase at this quick rate,
Yeah.
a lot of them, I think, and I've had some ask me, they're kind of ask themselves, well, what do I really invest in, or how do I go about educating myself? Because it's like you can't buy everything. I mean, maybe some people could, but you don't want to be buying every single thing that's out there on the market. So what would you suggest for athletes on how they can just educate themselves and maybe see what's right for them, because maybe some things will help certain athletes more than others?
Yeah, so for me, if I was back in this process again and all this technology was there, I would try to focus on the things I can control about myself. Something I could control, like you said, those body sensors, maybe they tell you your power output, your bat speed, and stuff like that. So that sounds like something where I get stats back right away that I can instantly hopefully improve on, that are tangible, how hard you hit the ball, how fast your bat got there. So I would focus on things that give you immediate feedback, any technology that gives you immediate feedback that can be immediately applied. And so right there, that sounds like something I would do. Anything that trains your vision. It doesn't even have to be for baseball or softball. It could be for any other sports. Vision training, I think, is really important, and hand-eye coordination training, stuff like that. All of that stuff directly applies to what you're trying to do. But when it comes to technique, no technique is the same for everyone in really any sport. There's plenty of techniques that work across the board. And of course, you always have your standard techniques, fielding a ground ball. Everybody does that the same. So I would focus on, the ones that give direct feedback to me as an athlete on things that I can directly improve on that are tangible: power, speed, vision training, hand-eye coordination, stuff like that. I think is where, as an athlete, I would try to hone in on.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that because a lot of what you're saying there, it's almost like focusing on the technology that can be individualized
Sure.
to you, that you can use to improve and work on the things that you specifically need to work on. And so, yeah, some of that technology, like, the one that you do put on the end of your bat, it gives you bat speed, it gives you velocity, it gives you a lot of stats so you can work on, hey, okay, my bat speed is here, but I want to get it to here.
Yep.
And so I think that technology that gives you immediate feedback, but also allows you to personalize the experience to yourself and can give you something to train on.
Sure. And so, yeah, exactly. If you see that your swing is slow, you can play with your swing, customize it to yourself, and improve it yourself rather than going off a random stereotypical standard that they've created and, on a swing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I like to ask this question, but it's a question that talks about being a 951 athlete. And as we talked about before, this is definitely a sports and faith podcast, but I like to hit on so many different topics. And I'm so glad that we could talk about technology today. But I like to ask, what is one way athletes can use what we've talked about today to be a 951 athlete? And that 951 athlete I compare to Christ and how Christ was very steadfast in his purpose and his goals and his dreams. So,
Mm.
how can athletes use what you've talked about, what you know, to be that steadfast, disciplined athlete?
I am or I was a faith-based athlete. I'm no longer an athlete, still faith-based business person. You could say that now. And I always, I don't know how I would tie this into technology, other than you should be doing everything you can to get better for God, because God always wants you to be your best and try your hardest and improve any way you can. But something when it comes to faith that took me a long time to learn in football, and I always played for God and tried my hardest, but in football and maybe just in the way I was as a person, it was hard for me to find the happy medium of how to play the game for God and yet still be a beast, and still be a hard-nosed player and stuff, because a lot of it,
Mm, yeah.
a lot of the way these defensive guys play in football is contradicting to the way God would want you to live your life. And so, it was really, and it took me to my senior year of college to really say, this is how you're supposed to play the game, Jared.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I prayed about it a lot, and I struggled there those first few years because I didn't know who I was on the field. I was battling being an athlete for God and yet still being a savage on the football field. And so I finally came to the conclusion after a lot of prayer and talking to my mom and stuff, going into my senior year of college, and it was just to be myself. Whatever that was, that's how God made me, and that's how God made me to be on the football field as well. And for any athlete, just whether you like, why do you play the game? For me, I played the game because it was fun, and it wasn't an anger outlet for me like I know it is for some people. I played college football because it was fun, and so I was just going to go out there and have as much fun as I could, because I knew my
Yeah.
my time was wrapping up, and that's why God had me play football, because it was a passion of mine and it was fun. And mentally, I went into every game knowing that's what I was going to do. And it actually made me less of a savage, and in that mind frame, because I always had to put on that mind frame, and it wasn't me. I was basically
Yeah.
faking, it seemed like, my whole football career. And then that final year, it was like, just go out there and have fun, and that's what God taught me. And some people, some people, they play football to be savage, and if that's really truly in your heart and that's the way God has made you, as long as you're playing the game for Him, then it's allowed within those lines. So go out there and just be yourself in whatever that sport is, because that's the way God made you and that's the way God would want it. So whatever yourself is, go out there and play the sport that way, and you'll be doing it right.
I think, and it's funny because I think that there is this misunderstanding a little bit when it comes to I'm a Christian, but I play a sport, and can I still be intense? Can I still be all this stuff? And it's,
Yeah,
there's this fine line there, but I would agree with that. It's you can still play for God and still have intensity and passion. I think it's really your heart behind why you're playing.
100%.
Why are you playing? Are you playing because, you really do have just all this anger and you want to take it out on people? Now, maybe that's not the best
Yeah.
reason to be playing this sport, but are you playing because, you're passionate about it? You do have an intensity and you want to go out there and play. And you know what? If you play football and you like to hit people, that's great, but you're doing it because you have this intensity and this
Yep.
passion for the game, and God gave you the skills to do that.
Yep.
And so I really like everything that you said there, and I think that you gave some great tips for these athletes. And again, I would encourage people to go check out Seam Readers, see what they're doing. And when it comes to technology, just do some research about what you think would best fit you
Yep.
and what you're trying to work on, your strengths and weaknesses, and really look at investing in yourself that way. And if you can, just try to take hold of some technology resources, because there are a lot of great things. And, even Jared was talking, the Seam Readers app is free. So, there's some stuff that you don't even have to pay for, or go borrow a mental game book from a friend or buy a used one, or, whatever you can within your means. And Jared, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge about Seam Readers and the technology world and everything around that. And so, Jared, just thank you again for being on the 951 podcast today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast, and God bless you all.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for listening to the 951 podcast. But before you go, please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media, and then tell all your friends, teammates, or really whoever you want to listen to the 951 podcast so that they can be ignited in their sports and faith journey.